Welcome to Grandma's Tales audiobook. I am so glad you are here. Today, I have a special bedtime story for kids about a little wooden boy who discovered that the greatest magic of all is a kind heart. As the world outside begins to bloom and the first green leaves appear on the trees, this story reminds us that growing a soul is much like growing a beautiful spring garden. It takes time, sunshine, and a lot of patience. This audiobook for toddlers and preschoolers is designed to bring peace and wonder to your evening. So, snuggle up, get comfortable, and let's begin our journey into the world of Pinocchio. In a coastal town where the houses clung to the limestone cliffs like weary travellers resting by the sea, there lived a man named Geppetto. To the villagers, he was a master of wood, a man whose life was measured in the rhythmic, spiralling curl of shavings, and the sweet, sharp scent of freshly cut cedar that mingled with the aroma of damp earth from the gardens below. His home was a high, sun-baked attic, accessible only by a winding stone staircase that smelled of old sea salt, flowering jasmine, and the persistent silver dust of decades. Geppetto was a woodcarver of extraordinary skill, but a man of very little fortune. His workshop was a silent, beautiful gallery of his talent, a place where time seemed to hold its breath. Along the walls, dozens of wooden figures stared with painted, unblinkingly curious eyes. There were tiny soldiers with silver-painted bayonets, delicate ballerinas frozen in mid-leap on porcelain pedestals, and grimacing harlequins hanging from rusted copper wires. Each was a masterpiece of detail. Every lace on a boot and every button on a vest carved with surgical precision. Yet each remained cold, hollow, and hauntingly motionless. Through the small workshop window, the first buds of spring were beginning to show on the apple trees. But inside, Geppetto felt as though his heart was still trapped in the long, silent winter. Another day, another doll, Geppetto would often mutter, his knotted fingers smoothing a piece of rough oak while the birds outside chirped about the coming warmth. He was poor, so poor that his fireplace was merely a clever painting on the wall, a trick of the brush to make the room feel less freezing during the bitter winds that occasionally blew in from the Mediterranean. His stomach often rumbled like the distant sea, and his blue apron was patched so many times it looked like a map of a lost country. For years, he had lived in the company of ghosts and ticking clocks, his heart aching for a son to carry his heavy tool chest and a voice to break the heavy, suffocating silence of the night. He looked at the empty flower pots on his windowsill and sighed, wishing for something to grow in his life. He dreamed of carving a magnificent marionette, one so perfect and agile that it could dance with the grace of a leaf falling in the spring wind, fence with a wooden sword like a knight of old, and turn somersaults that would make the village children gasp. "With such a puppet," he whispered to the shadows, "I could travel the world. I would no longer be the lonely carver in the attic. We would earn our bread with wonder and applause, and I would never have to eat watered-down soup again. We would see the great gardens of the world together." The change began on the night of the great spring gale. A wind smelling of ancient brine and the heavy perfume of blooming lavender roared off the sea. High on the jagged cliffs stood the Sentinel Apple Tree, a tree so old its roots were said to touch the foundations of the world, and whose blossoms held the light of 1,000 moons. As the sky turned a bruised electric purple, a single bolt of golden lightning struck the tree's heart. It didn't burn, it sang. The tree split with a sound like a cathedral bell, and a single branch, pulsing with an inner amber glow and heavy with the promise of life, tumbled into Geppetto's small garden patch. The next morning, Geppetto found it nestled among the fresh spring clover. It lay on the grass, polished by the rain, looking less like wood and more like a piece of the sun that had cooled in the dew. He felt a spark jump to his fingertips the moment he touched it, a vibration that felt like a tiny wooden heartbeat, or the pulsing of sap rising in a young sprout. He didn't see a branch. He saw a destiny. He carried it upstairs as if it were a fragile seedling. Back in his attic, Geppetto began his work. Tap, tap, tap. He carved with a feverish intensity, his tools gliding through the golden wood as if the branch were helping him shape itself. He talked to the wood as he worked, pouring his years of loneliness and his ocean of love into the grain. He told the wood about the stars, about the smell of fresh bread, and about the patience required for a garden to grow. "You see, little one," he whispered, "nothing beautiful happens all at once. The flower must wait for the sun, and the sun must wait for the father." He told the wood about the boy he had always wanted, but never had. But the wood was already listening, drinking in his words like rain. As he carved the eyes, the golden sap within the grain began to swirl like a miniature galaxy. The eyes opened, amber and bright, reflecting the flickering candle flame. When he carved the mouth, it didn't wait for the paint. It began to snicker and whistle a jaunty tune that sounded like the morning song of a robin. "Stop that," Geppetto barked, dropping his chisel in shock. "I am a master carver, not a jester." The puppet ignored him. As soon as the hands were finished, they reached out with a lightning-fast motion and snatched Geppetto's yellow wig right off his head, placing it on its own wooden crown. Geppetto froze. He looked at the puppet, then at the rows of lifeless, silent dolls on his shelves. For the first time in his long life, one of his creations was truly looking back at him, filled with the raw, untamed energy of a spring storm. The amber eyes were filled with a wild, chaotic light. In that heartbeat, Geppetto's ambition changed forever. The dream of earning gold with a dancing doll evaporated, replaced by a surge of paternal love so fierce it made his breath catch in his throat. He didn't see a performer anymore. He saw a soul. He saw a life that needed tending, just like the delicate sprouts in the valley. "You're alive," Geppetto whispered, his voice cracking with wonder and tears. He threw his arms around the stiff wooden torso, feeling the warmth of the wood. "I shall call you Pinocchio. You are not my puppet. You are my son." Pinocchio, however, was a whirlwind of unspent sap. He leaped from the bench, his wooden feet clack, 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 drumming a frantic, joyful rhythm on the floorboards. He mocked the silent soldiers on the shelves, tangled himself in the copper wires of the harlequins, and tumbled through the shavings like a golden whirlwind. The attic, once a tomb of silence, was now exploding with noise, light, and the frantic energy of a world being born anew. But a boy needed a future. And just as a young tree needs the right soil, a boy needed a school book to grow his mind. Geppetto looked at the empty larder and his own thin sapphire blue coat, his only protection against the lingering chill of the spring nights. Without a second thought, he took the coat and sold it to a travelling peddler. "Where is your coat, Papa?" Pinocchio asked, his wooden fingers touching Geppetto's shivering arm. "The world is far too bright today for a coat, my son," Geppetto lied, his teeth chattering. It was a lie born of pure, selfless devotion. The first lesson Pinocchio ever received in the meaning of love and sacrifice. And so, in the quiet of the spring night, with a heart full of hope, Geppetto watched his little son sleep. But tomorrow, the school bells will ring, and a wide, unknown world waits beyond the attic door. A world full of wonders, but also of hidden shadows. What will happen when Pinocchio takes his first steps alone? Join me in the next chapter of our story, where the journey truly begins. For now, close your eyes and let the scent of the apple blossoms lead you into your dreams. See you in part 2. Sweet dreams, my little spark. Sleep well.